Let's go for a walk. I'll try and do this better than last time. Sun's coming out. I was afraid that maybe the rain wouldn't hold off long enough for me to get out here and walk and talk with you. Reminds me of a quote from one of my favorite movies. It's a little bit older one. Quote is, "It can't rain all the time." One character was encouraging another character who'd been going through some pretty bad stuff. And that kind of reminds me, there's a lot of bad stuff going on, and I wonder if you have ever felt abandoned. Goodness, that must be maybe one of the worst human feelings there is, isn't there? I mean, it already means that something bad is happening. And then the feeling of being abandoned, being alone, maybe betrayed. Definitely not having the support of those you count on, that feeling of abandonment. I think that Jesus, in the Gospels accounts his time on the cross, and at the end he actually said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Seem to be some of the greatest words of abandonment in the Bible. And so we come to Ascension Day. Thursday was Ascension Day. And I've been reading a lot of people saying and having conversations about how maybe this is the one or the least observed celebration or holy day in the Christian church. Least observed, most overlooked. It definitely doesn't seem to draw a lot of attention. I think one of the reasons is because it's one of those weekday celebrations. It always comes 40 days after Easter, and Easter's always on a Sunday, so Ascension is always on a Thursday. And cultures change. I don't think people generally like to go to church on weekdays to observe. Even Good Friday over the last several years has been pretty low attended. And so that's one of the reasons. But I think another reason is very much revealed by something that a pastor friend and mentor of mine said as we were discussing the passages on Ascension, or just the very nature of Ascension Day, is this sense of abandonment that the disciples must have been feeling. And surely, Jesus knew that feeling from being on the cross and his passion ordeal, and yet it's really easy to see abandonment in this act of Jesus ascending to heaven and no longer being with the disciples. So not only is it kind of a weekday celebration that's easy to overlook in the busyness of life, but also we wrestle with this potential feeling of abandonment in regard to what happens on this day. And for the next 10 days after Ascension, the disciples must have been feeling the whiplash and the despair of, surely they saw Jesus resurrected and risen from the dead, but then he went away again. And I think about, they must have been feeling inadequate, hopeless, unsure. I can see them responding to Jesus' commission to spread the good news throughout the world with the thought of, I don't know how. We've been following you, but I don't know how to do this. And that resonates with me this year as we founded and launched a faith community. It seemed to have a good start. It seemed to be maybe a thing that I was born to do. That initial high of doing something scary. But then pandemic hit, COVID kind of took the legs out from underneath anything that was centered around gathering together, and then we had to do some deep deconstruction on what it means to be the church and how can we be an embodied community together when we can't be embodied together. It seems to resonate with that potential feeling of abandonment and that potential feeling of, I don't know how to do this. What are we going to do? I don't know how to do this. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way, not just in the church and not just pastors, but all kinds of people that had to reinvent their businesses and had to find new ways to be together with one another. And I think the disciples, that's probably wise that they were encouraged to just sort of gather together, kind of hide out in Jerusalem, though that's right in the den of the people who would most want to kill them. And so we have this, it's supposed to be a beautiful moment, I'm sure, Jesus rising up into the clouds, and then we see these two, presumably angels in white, that are very reminiscent of the two that were at the tomb who said, "Why are you looking amongst the dead for the living? He's not here." And then again, they're like, "Why are you staring into the sky? He's not here." And so the disciples are sort of left with the one thing to do that I think that the ascension truth leaves us to do. And this is where the good news connects. Is we're very much not alone. We're not alone in this, and we don't rely on Jesus alone to do this. But because Jesus ascends, it makes space and room for Pentecost, which is next Sunday, 10 days after the ascension is the day of Pentecost, which is the coming of the Holy Spirit, the birth of the church, and the launching of this movement that has pretty much changed human history. And we'll be celebrating that a little bit next week as we vote on whether to affiliate with the United Church of Christ, and as my people ordain me, as my faith outgrows my former tradition, and we, like pilgrims launch into the unknown. And so next week we'll be doing that, and that all comes with a time of preparation, asking some questions, doing some deep thinking and evaluating, and it's definitely something that we need to do in this period of time. Just this week I equated ascension with Lent, in that Lent is a time of preparation for Easter, and I think that ascension is a time of preparation for Pentecost. Pentecost is certainly the climax of the story of Jesus, God, entering into human reality and then infusing us with a foretaste of what's to come, infusing us with God's own Spirit so that we can become co-creators, already image bearers with one another, but we become co-creators in this world of the kingdom to come. And so that's what we do. That's what we're kind of compelled to do. And that's what Pentecost does. But before Pentecost, there's ascension. And maybe in that moment when we feel abandoned and alone, we can rely on the fact that there is a helper. And that helper is not just some disembodied spirit that we can't really connect with. But in truth, the helper comes embodied in flesh of the people around you, the image bearers around you, the co-creators around you. And every time somebody encourages you or helps you, provides for you, lifts you up, welcomes you in, advocates on your behalf, that's being a co-creator, an ally, a fellow pilgrim. I'm out here walking, and I like to say that what we're doing in the church, what we're doing as believers, is just that we're all pilgrims walking each other home. And so I walk with you now, and we walk together as a faith community, and I can point to the individuals who have encouraged me. I keep a box of cards and letters that people have written me, and I keep a mental log of all of the times that people have encouraged me. Certainly it would have been easy to pull away during this time of founding and new birth that encountered the difficulty of the COVID pandemic. It would have been easy for people to pull away and wander away, but I've been supported by a great group of people who just won't quit, who believe in me and seem to be in this for as long as I am, and believe in what we're doing. Trying to create something that's intentionally and unapologetically affirming, that's a welcoming space for everyone, even those who are deconstructing and doubting and questioning and exploring, a safe place to look at the similarities and interfaith. Even though we live in a place that isn't very diverse and doesn't have probably any interfaith activity, maybe that's all the more important for us to think about and listen to and reach out to people who aren't like us. And so I think of the Vals and the Gregs and the Mike and the Coles of the world. I think of the Michael and the Marta, even the people that have sort of gone away, Shirley and Pat. And, I think about those who are just on the side supporting and encouraging, like Fran and Ken, and the common vision that we had for feeding people and drawing people together in community. You've got people like that around you too. And if you can't see them or you can't sense them, then reach out to us. Maybe we can be that for you. We can be that for each other. Encourage one another. Okay? And so that's my hope for you today. That's my hope for you for Ascension Day. I mean, we celebrate, it's a Thursday. It was a couple days ago, but we gathered together on Sunday, and that's our focus and our theme today, because God ascending and the arrival of the Spirit to indwell in humanity means that we are co-creators of the kingdom. We are builders. We are community builders. We are the arms and hands. There's a famous quote, Christ has no hands in the world but yours. And so that's our encouragement. And we need that encouragement. Right now there's fighting going on in Palestine and Israel, and people are killing each other. And there's division over vaccinations and mask wearing and politics and red and blue parties and countries and people groups that have learned to hate each other. It's a great tragedy of humanity that being co-creators, having the potential to create beauty and community and to embody mercy, we choose violence and division and hatred and death and suffering. But the idea of ascension is that it doesn't have to be that way. Because though God is the prime creator, the prime source of our potential and our energy and all the good that is in us, and the good that connects us and weaves between us. We have that potential to live that out every day. And so I pray that you will not be overwhelmed by the immensity of the world's suffering and pain and sadness, but that you will feel the urgency coming from Pentecost, from the Spirit that resides in us and between us, to be for one another what we need to affirm and to love, so that we look into the eyes of everyone we see, realizing that they are all loved by God, that they are all image bearers, whether we disagree with them or even like them or not, that maybe we can learn to appreciate one another, to protect one another, because Jesus ascended and sent the Spirit so that we could embody that. What a great trust. What a great responsibility, but what a great trust that we are empowered and filled and led in the direction of unity and love and dignity, affirmation, and that despite all the darkness and suffering, pain and death in the world, that we can be light bringers and life bearers and loving, merciful, and kind. And if that's not what faith is doing, and if not, that's not what our communities are doing, then what's the point? Just get together and affirm common beliefs? I don't think that's the point. If that was the point, then why would there be an Ascension Day, and why would there be a Pentecost Day? Why would we be filled? It's not just about knowing and believing the right truths. It's about being and living and embodying that truth for justice and mercy, to recognize the light of God in one another. And so I wish that for you today. The light in me recognizes the light in you. The image of God in me recognizes the image of God in you. Namaste.